This last piece is a nonfiction piece. This is my 6th year in Shanghai, and 4 of those years I've been a scooter riding member of the Shanghai traffic. So I've gleaned a lot of wisdom about how to navigate Shanghai traffic that I'd like to share with you. Feel free to take notes. I'm just only presenting this once. If colors held positions in government, red would be a dictator. It's loud, flamboyant, and we feel compelled to obey it or receive deserved judgment. It's the playground bully and the overbearing in-law and the boss who makes your shoulders slump every time you hear his footsteps coming down the hall. And yes, there's a scientific reason for why red is used to signal danger. It has the longest wavelength in the visible color spectrum, but we don't have to be beholden to science, or colors for that matter. In a world where you're told to obey traffic lights as if they're statements, the streets of Shanghai unfurl a different banner, one of liberation from the constraints of law or reason. The first step in safely running red lights is to see those colorful circles not as statements, but as suggestions. It's up to you to decide if you want to stop or go, and no one can really tell you otherwise. Okay, some people can tell you otherwise. They're known as statement enforcers, to us freedom chasers. Before you attempt any acts of independence on the road, you should be aware of the presence of these enforcers, and when they might be a threat to you. There are 2 kinds of statement enforcers: the lone wolves and the cavalry. If you see one enforcer at a red light, you can breeze right through without worrying they'll look up from their phone and notice you. Most of the solo enforcers positioned at street corners are volunteers. And if they're not chatting with the grandpa who takes this route every day to pick up his grandson, then they're leaning up against a light post hoping to catch some shade. They'll watch cars get stranded in the middle of the road, or a kid on his tricycle wobbling against the flow of traffic, as if it's just another commercial on television. Every now and then a solo enforcer will try to be the voice of the law they represent. I once saw an enforcer admonish a motorist for being a few inches past the stop line, saying, "Don't you know you can get fined 30 kwai for that?" Or another time I listened to one rebuking a motorist for carrying a passenger on the back of his bike, telling him, "You could have seen me from back there and had her get off and walk. It's a 30 kwai fine for that, you know." In both situations, the officer made no move to collect the fine, because it is a known fact that a single enforcer can cite the law, but not enforce it. My favorite incident of a lone enforcer attempting to uphold the law was when a motorist was running a red light across a wide 4-way intersection. As he swerved between incoming cars, the solo enforcer whistled for him to stop. When the motorist drove on victoriously, the officer ran towards him, arms held out to stop him, as if he was playing eagle and chicken. The motorist swerved past his arms and rode off into the gray sunset. However, should you see the cavalry at a red light, slide to a stop with head lowered. Any number of enforcers beyond the number of 1 is an army, and they will decimate you and your family to generations of dust. But for every enemy waiting to ambush you in the streets, there are also allies. Street allies. If you're a novice at taking red lights as suggestions, don't attempt it during rush hour at 4-way intersections. Start with smaller streets, or any time past midnight, or under the cover of inclement weather, such as rain or hail. Even then, it's not always easy to find the strength to defy years of programming to fear that bold color. That's where Shanghai comes to your aid. At every traffic light, there are street rebels who lead the charge of defiance against the system. It can be anyone from the legendary Element drivers to the high school student watching a soap opera on his phone while he bikes across no man's land. Once you witness one brave soldier make it across without incident, that's when you know you have a legacy to follow. It's a glorious sight to witness as motorists and bikers trickle after the first tire tracks of that pioneer. All it takes is one, and then the flood breaks through. The AIs and the house insurance agents in cheap suits, and the guy with 7 crates of eggs on the back of his bike, and the other guy with a dead chicken under his feet, and the florist with open bouquets getting dusted with pollution. Everyone is united and marching across the front lines in harmony. There's very little that can stop a wall of moving bodies. But there are still some obstructions to freedom. When attempting a red light dash, beware of 4-wheeled tyrants. They come bearing down with glowing eyes and growls in their throat, and for the inexperienced, they can seem intimidating and unconquerable. They are beholden to laws that we are not, and that gives them arrogance to assume that they can drive according to the rhythm of red and green. There's a Chinese saying one of my students once told me: cars are steel protecting flesh and bone, while bikes are steel protected by flesh and bone. The lack of exposure these tyrants suffer makes them dangerous, and the sheer magnitude of their size seems to demand deference to them. They aren't unbeatable, though. One proven tactic for slowing down these tyrants of speed is to lock eyes with the driver behind the wheel as you interrupt their path. It is a known fact that people cannot kill someone who has looked into their soul, so make that eye contact crucial when you're confronted by a tyrant who thinks they can drive just because of some green light in front of them. Don't be afraid to utilize your position as being outside of the box of steel they sit in to your advantage. My preferred method is to slow down or even come to a stop in front of them, forcing them to stop because no self-respecting tyrant is going to exit their vehicle and make you move. In the end, their strength becomes their coffin, and we fragile things surround them and devour their attempt to adhere to the statement of red. I have seen this triumph firsthand. I have seen cars stranded in the middle of intersections they should be able to cross by the laws of light, but unable to move because of all those motorists and bikers running the red light around them. They sit there trying to inch forward, but afraid to go too much and hit one of the speeding motorists. Never forget that if you throw your life at the wheels of a moving vehicle, it will usually screech to a halt. Unfortunately, we two-wheelers are not the only ones who know this. There's another class of people who run amok on the streets of Shanghai, and their freedom runs directly in opposition to ours, rendering theirs acts of terror. These footwalkers have uncovered the secret to ruling over the roads, and that is that no one is willing to commit acts of murder. So they walk into the middle of crossfires without a second thought. I have watched mothers walking their toddlers across a line of traffic that is rolling to go. Girls stepping off the sidewalk as soon as the light turns red for pedestrians, but still sauntering slowly past the infuriated eye line of a dozen cars and motorists. Businessmen carrying out business deals on the zebra crossing, while vehicles dodge around them. They don't even flinch when wheels are speeding inches away from their sandal-exposed toes. They know they're going to live forever. You can't touch these footwalkers or relocate them from their planted position in the middle of the road. But you can honk your horn at them extremely loud and incredibly close. Watching a person jump out of their skin and then speeding past their string of angry curses is vindication in its own way. You may not be able to kill an immortal, but you can stick 100 needles into their skin and watch them squirm and scratch at the holes. Now that you've been armed with the legacies of those who have gone before and the map for avoiding those who would deter you, it's time to get out and be the one to defy that color. The ideal time for practicing your right of way is midday, because then the footwalkers and enforcers disappear for lunch. You only have to deal with the tyrants who think they deserve to drive in their direction because some color says so. Honking your horn, eye contact, these are all ways to slow down incoming traffic. You should also learn to pay attention to the sound of the wheels on the road. I've learned to tell from the sound of the wind and the pressure of the air how fast a car is approaching, and if I can intercept their path with minimal chances of injury. In time, you too can become a street rebel, leading other men, women, and children through enemy lines and onto paradise. You can dance past enforcers and evade even the monster of tyrants, buses and container trucks. And one glorious day, you might touch the pinnacle of those legends of flight who achieved the famed Ulama Dash. Named after those mythical streaks of food-delivering blue lightning, this is a feat that not all mortals can succeed at. I myself have only successfully done it 3 times. The feet is crossing a red light just as it turns on a four-way intersection. Cars and motorists and cyclists and pedestrians will have already started charging from left and right, and you have to go streaking through both walls of water just before they collide. You cannot slow, and you have no time for eye contact. You have to gun the engine or pump your legs and go, not looking anywhere but straight ahead, all while your ears burn with the roars of 100 vehicles coming closer and closer. In that moment, when your skin is tingling and the air is swarming with tires screeching and honking horns and swears are being hurled at your back as you soar through, you become a god.